This video is sponsored by Track Club. Get 2 months of music for your content free by using the link in the description. I've been using this fast-paced, snorri cam style follow shot a whole bunch lately to highlight different lenses or gear that I'm using, and it seems to be attracting a bunch of attention based on all the comments that I've been getting asking how I did it. I love this view because it's super unique, so it catches the eye easily. Visually, it's fun, but it's still simple because the subject always stays in the center of the frame, and best of all, it's easy to do. So because you asked, in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how I create a shot like this, including gear, setup, settings I use, some tricks in the editing phase to emphasize the style, and color grading, which will be important in a minute. So secure the cup and let's get into it. First things first, we're gonna need some equipment to make this happen. And today we're gonna be showing off one of my favorite lenses, the Tamron 35-150, and we're going to mount it on my Sony Alpha 1. And just so that it's said, I keep using this to film lenses, but you can use this same concept and adapt it a little bit, and it can be really cool to film all sorts of things. Now, the big question that everyone had about how I did these shots was, what camera did you shoot it on? With a few people actually assuming that it was either my Sony FX3 or my Lumix S5 IIX. But in the end, it was actually my iPhone 15 Pro shooting in Apple Log, and I'll get into my settings that make it look as good as it does in a minute. So then the only thing that we really need is somehow to mount the phone on top of the camera so that they move together at the same time. And I did this by using an iFootage Spider Crab friction arm, but you can use any friction arm that you want. Then we just need to attach that friction arm to a cold shoe adapter. iFootage happen to have their own here, but you can get generic ones for cheap on Amazon too, and I'll leave links to everything down in the description, including some cheaper alternatives than some of the stuff that I'm using. And then attached to the opposite end of the friction arm is going to be some kind of phone mount. So you can use some kind of a simple clamp one like this one, or what I used was the Peak Design mount that attaches to the Peak Design phone case that I have. Again, it just happened that I already have this stuff and I like using it, and it's great stuff, but the cheaper alternatives will work just fine. Once we've got everything all connected together, we'll take out our contraption, we'll attach it to the hot shoe of our camera, and then we need to line up the angle. But first, I'm gonna wanna get some settings sorted out on the phone because it's easier to do before it's actually attached to the top of the camera. To film all these bits, I'm using the Blackmagic Camera app, which is free to download, and there are just a couple of things that I want to make sure that I have sorted. First of all, I'm just going to set my white balance to daylight because we're going to be shooting this stuff outside. Then I'll go to my lens choice and I'll choose the 24mm lens because that's the best quality and because it's the best for framing as well. For frames per second, I choose 48, and we'll worry about the shutter and ISO once we're actually out there shooting. The most important setting for this specific effect, in my opinion, is to go down to the stabilization and turn it off. I think this is what really sells the whole effect. With the stabilization on, it doesn't have the same kind of fast-moving, panicked look since the iPhone is trying to smooth it all out. Then if we head into the settings menu, I'm shooting in HEVC H.265 codec, I'm shooting 4K, and I've got the color space set to Apple Log HDR. Under camera, I've got enable vertical video turned on. Scrolling down to media, I'm saving clips to in-app only, and under LUTs, I'm using a Rec. 709 conversion LUT that I made that you can get from my website if you want to use it too. This way it just looks more finished, it's easier to look at while I'm actually shooting because it doesn't look like Apple Log all flat and gray while I'm filming. If you want to know more about Apple Log, I also have a whole video on it, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to color grading too. Alright, so those are all the important settings for now. Let's attach the phone to our rig with the camera app open so that we can line it up where we want it to be. And if you want some help lining things up, you can click on the bottom right for the guides, and you can have the rule of thirds grid or a center marker or whatever helps you on. I'm trying to get as much of the lens in frame as possible, but also remembering that I am shooting 4K, so I can crop in a bunch later if I want. So wider is kind of better here. Once we've got our composition, we're going to click on the focus button, tap where we want it to focus, so right on the lens, and then we're going to turn off auto. We can fine tune this a little bit later, but we want to make sure that it's not trying to autofocus all over the place. It's just staying right in one spot. It's important to note that the main lens on the iPhone doesn't have the closest close focus distance, so you need to have the phone far enough away from the subject to make this work. I made this mistake once and the whole take was out of focus, so I don't do that anymore. And now that we're all set up, it's time to go out and film. When I'm filming these bits, the most important part is that there's some kind of movement going on in the background of the shot. So when I come out to try and find a spot, I just look for somewhere where there's a bunch of different textures or colors that I can use as that background. Then I hit record on the Blackmagic app and I just get a bunch of different shots. Specifically for these lens videos, I like to start things off by showing a shot of me attaching the lens to the camera. Then I like to get a bunch of shots of like me walking so you can kind of see my feet in the background. You know, I'll get one on the grass here, like some turns, just some kind of like movement. And I also like to get some shots of me fiddling with like the zoom or the manual focus, still wandering around, bringing it up to my eyes so that there's this kind of like whip, or like sideways. Do this again, up and snap. If there are any buttons on it, I can fiddle with those. So like switching to manual focus there, or pressing this button, something like that. And usually I'll just kind of do that, wander around, try and find a couple of different backgrounds, repeating those different ideas a couple of times until I feel like I've got like, I don't know, 2 minutes of footage or something, and then I'm done. I'm ready to go edit. Now that we have our footage, assuming that we're making some social content and the entire reel is going to be just this type of shot, the first thing I want to do is pick some good music to set the tone. So we're going to head to Track Club. We're going to hit songs and start to use the filters to find what we want. Because of the fast pace and quick movements of the shots that we got, I'm going to go to energy and I'm going to choose medium high. And then I'm going to set the genre to pop. Listening through a few of these, I'm really loving the track Body Electric by Amico Mio, but I want to make a little adjustment, so we are going to go over to the right side where it says Mix Lab. This allows me to essentially pick and choose which parts of the song I want to hear and how loud I want them. So on the left-hand side here, I can mute or solo anything that I want, and then over on the right-hand side, I can change the volume of anything. Then I just click download, choose the format that I want, and we've got our track. Since I'm often posting to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, I would rather just use a great song than try and mess around with trending sounds on those platforms that who knows if they'll get removed next week and it'll totally ruin my video. And if you want to give Track Club a try, there's a link in the description that'll get you 2 months for free, and I think you'll probably be really happy if you tried it out. So now that we've got the music picked, I'll generally try to cut down a section of it that can be looped and used as my base for the edit. Then I'll drag on my footage and start to find interesting pieces of it. I'm looking for the things that we talked about before. So the movement in the background with my feet walking and the ground moving by, the lens itself being moved around, and the different functions on that lens. So I'll just chop out a bunch of those little pieces to use. Then I'll start to line them up to the music, and usually I'll try to make the cuts happen along with the beat of the music so that they kind of feel like they're going together, though it's not super important all the time. Depending on the video, I might want to toss some titles on top that give information about the lens. And then we're off to color grading. Now, I am going to keep this reasonably brief here because I have lots of other videos that talk about all the little nitty-gritty stuff of color grading, but the foundation of what we need to get done here is to transform it from Apple Log to Rec 709 and then add some special sauce. So the first thing I'm going to do is make 2 nodes and add a color space transform onto each of them. The first one will be transforming Rec 2020 and Apple Log to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. And then the second one is going to be going from that DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate to Rec 709 and Rec 709A. This is our conversion so we can see how we're doing to start with, and then I'm going to add some nodes in between those to do the grading. So I'm keeping it really simple here by just using 2 nodes. One is going to be for those primaries, so exposure, contrast, and white balance. And then the second one, I'm gonna do a bit of like kind of a look on it, if you will. So I'm just adding a little bit of a blue in the shadow and then a little bit of orange in the light on my HDR panel here. Also gonna add a custom curve on here. That's giving me a bit of a cool look. I'm just gonna push the gamma a little bit here, and that's looking pretty good. Only thing I'm gonna do is after the output transform, I am going to add some grain. You can do this by using the film grain that's built into Resolve, but I quite happen to like Film Convert Nitrate's grain. I'm just gonna turn off the film settings, turn the grain size down to 2, and then dial back the grain to 50%. So for our complete look, here's it in Apple Log, then here's the conversion, primaries, a little bit of sauce, and then some grain. Now, because all of these came from the same clip, I'm going to grab a still of this, and then I'm going to apply it to the last version or the last clip in this sequence by either right-clicking and hitting apply grade, or you can just middle click on that. And then what I'm gonna do is right-click on that clip and go copy local grades to remote. And what it's gonna do is apply that grade then to any other clip that came from the same video file. Then we can just really quickly go through, check them, and make sure they all look good. And if any of them do need updating, we can right click, go to remote versions, and create a new version to give that one some individual love. That's all it wants. And then it looks like I had one clip from a different video file, so I'm just going to middle click on any of the other ones to apply that same grade across to this one. And so now, when all is said and done, we have this. I highly recommend taking this whole idea and anything that you learned in this video, trying it for yourself. Use it as an entire short form video, combine it with other shots to make a cool effect, do it in vertical, do it in horizontal, just have some fun with it. And if you do, make sure to tag me on socials. If you have any questions about what I did, or if I went over anything too fast, make sure to watch this video again or hit me up in the comments and I will try my best to help. Or if you want me to cover anything else, leave a comment down below and I'll try and make a video about it. Links are down in the description for all the gear that I used and some more stuff too, as well as that 2-month free trial for Track Club. So go check that out. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. I feel like I've been standing on my tippy toes that whole time. My calves are really sore. Jeez Louise.